TikTok is about to beat Facebook. Apple expands its walled garden while Meta is being fined another $15 million. This is just getting out of hand. And Instagram and LinkedIn have two very different ways of trying to combat some spam. This is the Act 18 show. Hey, I'm Jason, faith-based entrepreneur marketing geek. Timestamps and sources below, along with a link to today's sponsor, our funnel launch kit. It has our top-performing landing pages, sales pages, and upsell pages, along with an email and course framework to help you go from idea to sales in just a few days using 100% free forever software. Linked up in the cards and description. Now, first up, we have TikTok. So check this out. TikTok is now on track to potentially beat Meta when it comes to revenue numbers, which is absolutely insane. So we're talking about a 60% revenue jump in the first half of 2024, bringing in a whooping 17 billion and internationally. So all in, not just the US. And this just feels like, a high schooler who's stayed out way past their curfew. They know they're going to get grounded for the next month, but they just don't care because they are just having such a great time. And I am really trying to figure out how or why ByteDance and TikTok has not done anything to tell the rest of us what they're going to do come January 2025, because that's, with my terrible a grounding analogy, that's when they're supposed to get kicked out of the US, right? Which is one of their largest markets. So I'm not quite sure what's going to happen there. Maybe they've got some secret corporate plan where they're going to set up in some small, Caribbean island and reincorporate there. And then they're technically, not in China anymore, so they can keep going. I'm really not sure. But if you have the time and if you already are thinking about another place to post content, or you're thinking about another advertising platform, turns out advertisers are making money with TikTok. Otherwise, they wouldn't have grown 60%. Now, even if you aren't running paid ads and you're just a content creator and you're looking for a place other than YouTube to actually pay you, TikTok might be a good way to go because presumably they'll have more money for their creator fund. But also, if you sell any products or services, you can use TikTok Shops, which is getting really popular. And even if you don't want to live stream or create native content for TikTok, you can still run ads there. It's relatively cheap, especially when you compare it to something like Google Ads, right? Which is just so freaking expensive now. Plus, you can use something like Zapier to integrate with like Systemi.io, which is what we recommend, linked up in the description, or any of your other, digital product course softwares, or even, Shopify. So you don't even have to have everything on TikTok in order to start taking advantage of this. And so I bring in this story just because they're making a lot of money, which means advertisers are making a lot of money, which means us as creators and entrepreneurs have an opportunity there. Whether you have a product or service to sell, it's working for other advertisers, so it should work for you. Or if you're looking for another place to post content, at least it's actually possible to get paid on TikTok versus making short form content for Instagram Reels, where they just still pay creators nothing. And just to put into perspective how monumental this growth is and compared to, Meta and Facebook, like Meta and Facebook are currently sitting around, 75.5 billion this year. So they've grown 25% versus TikTok 60. And TikTok is now at 73 billion. So yes, 2.5 billion difference. Like, we're talking about billions here. It's not just like a cup of coffee or something, right? This is a lot of money. It's a lot of revenue. But when you think about Meta versus TikTok and the fact that TikTok is just 2.5 billion away from making the same amount of money as Facebook/Meta that's been around for at least twice as long, is pretty eye-opening in terms of the growth of this platform. Now, the good news is every generation seems to continue to use YouTube, so at the very least, we can still count on YouTube being a good place for creators and advertisers for the time being. I'm just very interested to see what happens come January, because I keep combing through news article after article trying to figure out what on earth is ByteDance's plan here, because they just keep partying, they keep raking in the cash, and they're acting like they're not about to be kicked out of one of their biggest markets. Now, next up, we have Apple. Normally, I don't talk about Apple on this show. Of course, they had a bunch of updates with their new M4 chips. Not a super techie on that. I still use an M1 and I'm just fine. It tells you how much power I actually need for editing. Now, Apple has purchased another software called Pixelmator. I think I'm saying that right. I had to watch a couple of YouTube videos and everyone pronounced it differently, so I don't know if I'm saying the software right. But essentially, it's a photo editing software, and I would say this is a pretty cool thing. Now, of course, we all know that Apple loves its walled garden. It doesn't want its devices talking to anything other than Apple devices. It doesn't want its software working with anything other than Apple devices. So if you are a solo, and I mean keyword being solo, if you're a solo creator, you already have a Mac, you already have an iPhone, you're trying to post to Insta or TikTok or X or LinkedIn, and you're doing a lot of your content creation on your phone, this is a no-brainer. It's currently still $50 lifetime. Now, something I do appreciate about Apple when it comes to software, not hardware, they solder everything. You just can't fix your laptop if it breaks. But when it comes to software, it's really cool because for the most part, they make sure it works. You're never going to have the latest and greatest features, but you always know the software is going to work with the device you have, even if your device is relatively old. And they're not going to switch to like version 3 or 4 and ask you for another $50 or $300. Just think of all the people who bought Final Cut Pro. They have never had to pay for an upgrade. Like, it just keeps getting better and better and better, albeit slow compared to other softwares, but it always works as long as you're using a Mac, right? And you are pretty much guaranteed to have free updates as much as Apple loves subscriptions. And so if you're a solo creator, you want something to edit your photos with, I think this is a no-brainer. I don't think they're going to switch to a monthly or annual pricing plan with this because it's already a one-time fee. And it's just part of Apple's strategy where they're looking around saying, how do we keep people on our devices? How do we keep people buying our iPhones and buying our laptops? Well, why don't we just give them a ridiculous deal on editing software, Final Cut Pro, and now they're going to give us a ridiculous deal a good deal on photo editing software, this Pixelmator thing. And so when it comes time to get a new phone or get a new laptop, Apple knows that people will start thinking, oh, well, I've been using Final Cut Pro for 3 years. Do I really want to switch to a Windows? Or I've been using this Pixelmator thing. Do I really want to switch to an Android and find a new one? And so the integration is just going to be something where Apple wants to keep everyone inside that so profitable walled garden. And for the most part, solo creators do benefit from that walled garden. However, if you are someone who wants to have a team eventually, then this is definitely not something that's going to replace Canva or Adobe, because the advantage of those other two, albeit Adobe is ridiculously expensive, you do have the option of purchasing seats for other members. So as an example, I have a Canva team plan, so I have other people who can access our designs, fix them, download them, do them for shorts or whatever. And so it is kind of nice to have that. But if you're running solo and you're going to be solo editing for a while, this is pretty much a no-brainer. Why not? Now, 2 rapid fire, just so you know, updates. Number 1, LinkedIn is removing these templates for announcements. Just a friendly reminder that when we use cool, awesome features from the social media platforms, they can take them away anytime they want. We don't actually own the content we use. We create when we use these tools. And so if you just so happen to use one of these templates, not only are you not going to be able to use them anymore, but then they're also going to be removed from current posts, which seems a little extreme, but I don't really think it's a huge deal. But just FYI, in case you wanted to make sure your LinkedIn posts don't look weird with a bunch of, missing template images. Now, this next update comes from Instagram, and they are going to be helping us filter out all that spam in our DMs. Thank you, Insta. So generally, I just think this is a little win. I think it's awesome that they're looking at how to make things more manageable for creators on their platform. And of course, if you've ever tried to grow your Instagram account and the Instagram experts notice your inbox, your DMs just get inundated with so many experts and gurus and courses and softwares that are going to help you blow up your Instagram. And you go to all of them and they have like 50,000 followers and 2 likes on their last post, right? Like, it's just, you just look at it and go, I know those are a bunch of bots, or I know you paid for it, right? So I am pretty much a fan of this. I don't use Insta all that much. People on my team kind of do it for me because I just don't have I really don't have the brain for it. But I do like the fact that we're going to be able to easily filter through, hopefully, all of that spam. Now, this next one is rather serious, has an element of tinfoil hat in it, but we're going to go through it because these types of legal battles do trickle down and affect us as entrepreneurs and creators quite a bit, albeit if it takes a while. I guess today I'm just saying albeit all the time. Anyway, here we go. Now, South Korea has slapped Meta with a $15 million fine for illegally collecting user data and not properly disclosing how the data is used, using vague legal messages in their terms of service. Go figure. And of course, finally, not having proper identity verification processes because like 10 people got their accounts hacked, right? When someone faked being them going through the account recovery process. And so, of course, the attorney generals or whatever that position's called in South Korea, they are, of course, claiming that they're protecting consumers, making sure Facebook's not inappropriately collecting data or sharing that data inappropriately, and blaming Facebook for not explicitly telling users that, hey, you're not just being tracked on Facebook, you're being tracked across the web. And I think we're getting to a point where a lot of these AGs, and by the way, I'm zooming out here, so don't take this as any one country because most countries are doing this and it's ridiculously annoying because we're going from, oh no, I didn't know big tech was censoring certain types of content, or, oh no, I didn't know big tech was following me everywhere around. In 2024, I think we all know what they're doing. And so we've gone from attorney generals saying, hey, you have to tell your users what you're doing, to attorney generals essentially being kind of glorified nannies at this point, where they're just like, hey, I know you technically following the law. I know your terms of service technically does say what we require you to say. But you know what? You're not following the spirit of the law, right? So we're going to fine you anyway. And we'll get to kind of a disturbing theory that Tim Cook allegedly has in a little bit here. But just to back up with this technology, because I think the issue is we've reached a point where it's on the consumer. It's on us to clear our browser's cookies. It's on us to use ad blockers if we don't want ads on sites. And it's on individual websites, GDPR requires this, to disclose that there's tracking pixels and codes from Google and Facebook and TikTok on their sites. So part of the issue here is governments are looking at Google and Meta and these big tech platforms and saying, hey, you're not telling your users that they're being tracked across websites, right? And Meta, Google, and Facebook are like, hey, we have a clear terms of service. Anyone who is an adult, like let's say anyone who's an adult who understands basics of technology knows we are tracking them. I mean, Apple now forces everybody to say, hey, we're tracking you, by the way. But you can reject it, kind of. And one of the issues here is a lot of these attorney generals are saying, yeah, you have a terms of service for your own site, but you're not telling people that they're being tracked on other sites. Well, that's not Facebook, Google, TikTok's job. It's the job of the website owner. In fact, in their terms of service, Google, Facebook, Meta, I'll just say social platforms, they tell all their advertisers, you have to disclose that you put our tracking pixel on your site. And so the reason I bring this up is because once these tech companies have been sucked dry from all of these fines, these attorney generals are going to start coming after the individual websites. It'll be the big ones at first, but it'll eventually trickle down. So it's very important that you have a proper terms of service and a proper privacy policy on your website that is clickable across all of your pages. So I will leave a link in the description for one I use called Termageddon, which automatically updates based upon because seriously, every single state in the U.S. has a different freaking requirement for the policy. So they actually put a code on our new site, and then they just automatically update it with whatever the heck a new attorney general or a local legislature passed, right? It's just impossible to keep up with. So even if you don't want to use Termageddon, linked up in the description, you definitely just make sure you have a privacy policy, because this is going to trickle down. This is going to start hurting us. And this hyperbolic language that's used a lot of the time is disingenuous, because a lot of these attorney generals say, hey, Facebook, Google, Meta, Facebook Meta, Meta, Facebook, TikTok, they are sharing all this personal data with advertisers. No, they're not. You just take 90 seconds, go over to YouTube, which thankfully is still going, and look up a Facebook ads tutorial. It's a list of interests that you can't like. If you say, oh, I want to target people who like NASCAR, I want to target people who like American football, or I want to target people who like rugby, like whatever it might be, that is what a lot of these attorney generals are saying is sharing personal data. I don't know how a drop-down list of a bunch of different sports, car brands, clothing brands, general interests translates into personal data. Yes, these social media platforms know exactly which book, which car, which, athlete we like, because they've got AI, they've got a lot of stuff. But they aren't taking that individual information and sharing it with advertisers. They lump it all together in this big data pack, and they say, people who like luxury brands. That's it. That's you click that box, and now you can, sell your bags to people who like luxury brands. So I know I'm getting a little off track here on a rant, but all that to say, this stuff does affect us. It does trickle down. It's not too far-fetched, especially when it comes to the EU, to believe that they're going to start looking at individual sites, because the technology's there. They can start crawling sites, and they'll just start sending out letters to whoever the site administrator is saying, hey, we're fining you, 1,500 euros because this is wrong in your terms of service. And by the way, if you don't pay us within the next 90 days, we're going to block you from the EU, right? So there's a little tinfoil hat. And just to wrap up here, when I was watching the Joe Rogan and now President-elect Trump podcast, something that was interesting is the president or future president, I guess now, mentioned that he had a conversation with Tim Cook where Tim called him up and said, hey, the EU's fined us I don't know how many billions of dollars again. They are using these fines to run their bureaucracies.
3 hours ago, he called me. He said, I'd like to talk to you about something. What? He said, the European Union has just fined us $15 billion. I said, that's a lot. I know the feeling because I get fined too in fake cases. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if his case is fake yet, but it's a lot. Then on top of that, they got fined by the European Union another $2 billion. So it's a $17 to $18 billion fine. I even said about Apple, can you pay that? I mean, do you have that kind? Mm-hmm. That's a lot of money. And he said something that was interesting. He said they're using that to run their enterprise, meaning Europe is their enterprise. And I said, that's a lot. I said, but Tim, I got to get elected first. But I'm not going to let them take advantage of our companies.
When you start looking at the total amounts that other bureaucracies or governments or, protection agencies continually fine these guys, yes, they always try and skirt around the laws. But at some point, we have to look and say, okay, why are you trying to fine, Musk almost a fourth of his global revenue? And then why are you including other companies that he happens to own in this fine? It starts to look like something else is going on. So there's the tinfoil hat. Long story short, just make sure you have your terms of service and your privacy policy clearly on your website, whether you head over to Create Market or Etsy, or you look for a template online. Do not copy and paste it. That's a quick way to get a lawyer, a real lawyer showing up. That'll make things go faster. So even if you don't use Termageddon linked up in the description, just have that protection ready, because if they're coming for the billion-dollar companies, you better believe they're going to eventually get a system in place where they come for every single site, because this is very important to them. Whether or not it's important to us is a whole nother story. Now, we'll wrap up with a much, much lighter one. Boy, believe it or not, I did keep that last one shorter than I wanted to. But anyway, we'll wrap up with LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn has decided to combat spam. They are going to start an ID program and verification. So this is one that I'm actually not as against as I normally am, because it's voluntary. with a little asterisk though. So essentially, they've partnered with this company called Clear, and you can upload your identification. Clear will go through whatever process they go through, and then you'll get this nice, little icon next to your name, letting everyone know that you're a real person. And I think this is LinkedIn's way of combating spam and scams, although, fake gurus abound. So just because they have that thing next to their name doesn't mean when you pay them $1,500 to manage your Google Ads account, they're going to do a good job. So I do think that this is a little silly, though, because it's only being rolled out in the US. So we're still going to have to double check all those Nigerian princes who have lost their pots of gold. But if a recruiter spams your inbox for the 11th time in a couple weeks, then at least you know that the spam is coming from a real person. I don't see this as being super transformative or helpful, other in the fact that it helps recruiters and people who are looking to hire to kind of skip the ID verification process, because it can be quite expensive. If you're trying to hire someone, you met them through LinkedIn, and you want to go do all that verification to make sure they're really who they say they are, having that check, knowing that Clear and LinkedIn paid for that background check process, however small it was, is an advantage to recruiters and people who are hiring. So there is a practical reason that a lot of people would want to see this on someone's profile who they're potentially hiring. Of course, if you're not familiar with Clear, if you've ever been stuck in an immigration line in almost any country in the world, and you look to your right or left and you see those people who just walk through this giant open space where there's no lines, that's probably Clear with their global entry program. So Clear does have a lot of data on us already, even if you don't travel internationally. But as long as LinkedIn doesn't turn this into your reach is going to be stunted if you haven't done this process, I think it's a good thing. And as long as it's optional, that's cool. Now, I want to wrap up with I have to eat my words, because when when Instagram came out with their little QR code for your profile, I of course said I think this is silly. I don't think anyone's going to use it. And of course, the very next week, when I was doing some shopping here with my wife in Bangkok, I purchased actually the shirt I'm wearing from a local clothing company, and it's actually held up quite well. There's a problem with fast fashion anyway, and we actually used the Instagram QR to connect on Instagram. And of course, she was able to send me the care instructions in English, because obviously I don't speak the local language here. But just wanted to share that. If I'm wrong and I have to eat my words, there you go. My wife even made sure to record me holding the phone because she heard me recording that particular episode, and it was just kind of a nice little laugh. And luckily, I could be wrong on the little stuff. If I'm wrong on the big stuff, it's sometimes painful. But at least I can laugh at myself and say, hey, you know what? The using the Instagram QR code was not as silly as I thought. So thank you so much for watching. Sincerely hope you got some value out of this episode. I know we went a little long on that meta story, but I do think it's really important. Make sure you have those terms of service. If I forgot to put Termageddon in the description, which I probably did, then go ahead and just search them up. It is an awesome tool to make sure that your terms of service and privacy policy stay up to date, because they will send you emails, ask you basic questions. It takes like 30 seconds, and you make sure that you are protected, because these lawsuits and fines are just getting absurd and ridiculous. So hit that like button, subscribe for more just like this. Tutorials are almost on the way and back. And until then, keep building the business you love.